Available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. I was on Facebook the other day when somebody posted up a meme of a picture of a black woman asking the question, an entire generation of men now sees women as a waste of time, and asking, how did we get here? Well, we got here because when it comes down to people in the late 20th century, they started to walk out of the order of God. And as we walked out of the order of God, men and women in the black community started to take lines in the gender war. Now, when it came down to God, when he created man to be his steward, who was made in his own image, to have dominion over the earth. And as he gave him dominion over the earth, he said it was not good for a man to be alone. And as he said it wasn't good for a man to be alone, he created the woman to be the man's helpmeet and be the one who would work with him as related to doing the work of God. However, when it came down to the modern woman, the modern 20th century woman in the late 20th century started to take us down a road where an entire generation of men now see relationships with women to be a complete waste of time. Now, when it comes down to many of these men, they sadly were put on this course because of a group of wealthy men. Now, these wealthy men, what they wanted to do was try to play God and try to reshape society. And as they looked to reshape society from their elite think tank, they wanted to go out here and look to reverse God's order, where he basically, again, created man to have dominion over the earth and be the steward over the earth. No, they weren't happy with a man being the steward over the earth. They weren't happy with a man having control over his home and his household. And as a result of them wanting to go out here and look to try to keep themselves in power, similar to what the Pharisees and the Sadducees did, these men wanted to walk away from God's order and wanted to go out here and look to create their own. And what they did was start a campaign to first start getting the father out of the home, because they did not want that man to be in his natural leadership role that God established. And once they looked to start getting the father out of the home, they then looked to try to replace the father with the mother. And then as the mother was out here working, the children would be in front of a TV if they were not in institutions like daycare. And as a result, what would happen with this whole situation, again, they started getting women caught up in the rhetoric of the white feminist movement. Now, there were feminists before this. They were the first wave, which were called suffragists. And again, many women basically dismissed those women because those women were living alternative lifestyles, and many of them were rich women who basically, again, were in some cases racist. So a lot of white women didn't want anything to do with those women. However, the wealthy went out here and repackaged the whole narrative of the suffragists and turned it into feminism. And as they turned it into feminism, they went out here and supported bringing the woman into the workforce, because once they got the father out of the home, they wanted the mother to be the head and provider of the home. And as she was out here making the money, the children would be in these daycare centers where they would be taken care of not by their mother, but be taken care of by workers in the daycare when they were young. And as they were in the daycares and other places, be put in front of television. And as they were in front of the television, what happened with these children? Again, they were being programmed by the media and not taught by their parents. And as they were programmed by this media, what happened with many of the girls of that generation is that they had their heads filled with a lot of dysfunctional information, like from many of these romance novels, and things like these Disney princess movies, things like these soap operas, things like these romance novels, and all of this media. And all of this media basically gave a lot of girls a really unrealistic picture of relationships and how they worked. And all of these girls started to buy into the fantasy and delusion that they could go out here and get one of these rich men to go out here and sweep them off their feet and give them a lifestyle. And as these girls were taken down this road with this programming, they were taken off the role that God established, because God established for the woman to help meet the man's needs and work with the man. But as these girls were indoctrinated into this whole feminist mindset, they were taught that they could be the leaders and the head of household as they worked at these jobs, and that they could go out here and live this alternative lifestyle without the need of a man. And as they were taught that they did not need a man, what happened was that these women basically started to express a lot of hatred towards men that was reinforced to them in media such as the Oprah Winfrey Show, and literature like Alice Walker's The Color Purple, and many other books like Push, the novel that the movie Precious is based on. A lot of these media, especially in the case of black women, was designed to demonize black men and make black men to be the bad guy of the story. Meanwhile, what was happening was that white supremacist media made by the white feminists was again going out here creating this divide between men and women in the black community, and making it where that black man could not work with that woman and could not work with that black woman, who basically was sitting here again with a head filled with misinformation. And as she had her head filled with misinformation, she was looking for the love of a father that she did not have to nurture her. And as she was looking for this love, sadly, she started getting involved with these Pookie type guys. And as she got involved with these Pookie type guys, again, an entire generation of working class men who wanted to go out here and build a life with black women saw that they could not build that life with black women, because many of these black women were already deeply misinformed as related to the media they watched. They basically were in a toxic home with sometimes a single mother who was competing against them, and in a home with sometimes different men coming in and out of that home. And that basically led to a situation where the woman was basically filled with serious issues as related to her mental health, as related to her emotional health. And a lot of this white media taught these black girls hatred of themselves. So when it comes down to these women, again, they come already with a lot of issues and a lot of baggage, and those issues and baggage make it where a lot of men, they wanted to try, especially a lot of Gen X guys, they tried to want to have a relationship with these girls, and when they were teenagers in the 1980s. However, there's no having a relationship with a woman who's, again, been indoctrinated into feminism, because one, she does not want to be in the role of a helpmeet. No, she wants to be in the leadership role that basically Madison Avenue and Hollywood have told her she's supposed to be in. And she doesn't want to follow the order of God. No, she wants to follow the order of the mammon of corporate America. And that makes it where many men just see it as a waste of time, because basically this woman is incompatible with them. This modern feminist indoctrinated woman is incompatible with a man, because she can't work with that man. And most men basically see it as a waste of time to try to work with someone whose whole frame of thinking that she's been programmed with just does not work with him towards having a healthy relationship. That's what many men basically were thinking in the early 2000s after coming out of the 80s and 90s with this toxic media. And as we got into the 2010s, things got progressively worse when many of these same women started to go out here and look to support things like the Me Too movement. Now, the whole situation between black men and black women was pretty bad before the Me Too movement. However, it got progressively worse because during the time of the Me Too movement, after the verdict that basically convicted Bill Cosby on trumped up charges, what happened was that many people basically saw that interpretation of the law to mean that a man could wind up losing the intangible of his professional reputation, his personal reputation, and his freedom, all based on the allegation of a woman, and with a man needing to survive by being able to get a job and make a living. Many men started looking at women and saying it wasn't worth the time to look to get into a relationship with them, or even look to see these women as somebody who they could look to spend time with, because any effort to make time for these modern women would be a waste of time for many men, because a lot of cases, one, these women are starting out from birth having serious issues due to the dysfunctional homes that they came from. Two, once they come out of the dysfunctional home into adolescence, they're looking for that father figure and get involved with these pookie type guys on top of the trauma that they've had in their homes. And then three, after they come out of that home with the abuse from the toxic environment, which may have physical or other types of abuse, then if she's with the pookie and again has the emotional damage, she then is coming into the adult social marketplace. And as she comes into the adult social marketplace, this man is looking at this woman who has all these serious issues, and if he looks to get involved with her at a place like a job, he could wind up losing his job, all based on an allegation of sexual harassment. If this woman just looks at him and doesn't like him, or in many other cases, if he does get involved with her, she can go out here, if the relationship doesn't go the way she wants, or if he takes her out to a restaurant and she doesn't get to order what she wants, she can then go out here and file a sexual harassment charge, and the company, fearing liability, will go out here and fire him. So when it comes to the man in that case, he doesn't want to get involved with these women because there's too much for him to lose. I mean, if he gets involved with this woman, at the job, he can lose his job. Or if he gets involved with this woman out here in the streets, she can go to the police, go out here, make an allegation. And if she makes that allegation, what happens is that man could wind up losing his freedom and wind up catching a case and wind up on jail just on charges, just on her word. And with those whole situations, basically men look at women and see them not as somebody who adds to their life, but sees them as a liability. No, they see going out here and looking to pursue any sort of relationship with women as a waste of time, because if they take the time to go out here and look to approach that woman and take the energy to go out here and do that, they may wind up losing everything from their job to winding up even losing their freedom in this woman putting a case on a guy. And with these whole parameters basically reinforced by the courts, even though the Cosby conviction was completely overturned, all the social rules had basically been changed by that verdict, and now you have a whole generation of women scratching their heads and wondering how we got here. How did we get here? Well, we got here 60 years ago when the wealthy went out here and supported the feminist movement in an effort to go out here and look to go out here and make the woman the breadwinner in an effort to go out here and reap more profits. That's how we got here as related to this situation. And sadly, 60 years later, what this whole quest for profits has done has not really profited society, because instead of men and women going out here and being fruitful and multiplying the way God wanted, what's happening is these rich people and these feminists have basically taken men and women, especially black men and women, down the road of the devil, where men basically have come to the point where they basically think a situation with women is a waste of time, and they see it as a waste of time because many working class men don't see themselves having any chance with many of these modern feminist indoctrinated women, because these women basically, when they first are coming out in adolescence, don't want to choose the working class man or the guy who's looking to do well in school. No, because of all the issues they have, they choose the pookie type guy, they choose the street guy, the hood guy, the bad boy, and then after they get turned out by those guys, then want to go out here on a quest to be with the good man. And that puts these women in a paradigm of failure generation after generation, because as they look for that so-called good man, they basically wind up putting the men that are quality men, again, completely second or even fifth. And that's where many of these men feel disrespected. An entire generation of men who went out here, went to school, went out here and went to work, and went out here and established themselves as leaders. What those men basically feel is that it's a waste of time to deal with these women who have basically been out in these streets, again, with these pookie type guys, some of them coming to you with kids by different fathers, and then come to you and say, oh, I want a good man at this point. I want the good man at this point. And that's where a lot of guys are just saying no dice to these women. Nope, we're not dealing with you, because dealing with you means that I'm going to have to, one, deal with a lot of baggage and issues once you've been turned out by all those guys, and even the issues from your childhood, and then deal with your kids. And on top of that, if things go wrong in the relationship or you can't get your way, you going to my job to try to get me fired, or you trying to put a case on a brother over something like leaving the toilet seat up. These are the things that lead to men looking at the time in their lives and understanding the concept of time is something precious, because with time, it's something you just can't get back. And with us only having a little bit of time in this life, every second you spend dealing with a toxic woman is something that makes it where you think about your time being precious as related to having some peace in your time. And when it comes down to many of these modern feminist indoctrinated women, they basically bring nothing but grief to men. And with them bringing nothing but grief to men and nothing but problems and headaches and drama, most men these days, what they're doing is looking to just stay to themselves, because they don't see the benefits of this woman being a helpmeet to them as stated in the Word of God. I mean, God said it was not good for a man to be alone, but sadly, within this society that the devil has corrupted with this 20th century concept of feminism from corporate America, many men would rather just sit there in a room with a bowl of herbs than be in a house with a contentious woman who is never happy, never satisfied, never at peace, because she keeps trying to chase a dream as related to Madison Avenue in Hollywood, as related to the social construct and fantasy that the wealthy created. And no man can please this woman because she's caught up in these idols. And as she's caught up in these idols, basically most men realize that there is no pleasing this woman, who will never give them any peace. And with her putting his freedom at jeopardy, many men would rather just be alone rather than deal with the grief of this modern feminist that basically the wealthy have created their own Frankenstein monster. And when it comes to society, most men have basically checked out at this point and are leaving these women at the tender mercies of the rich men who created this Frankenstein monster of a feminist that nobody is compatible with. That's what happened as related to most men out here. Most men just don't see it as worth their time or their energy to go out here and look to get involved with these women. That's what this new generation has been taught as related to what happened in the aftermath of the Me Too movement. But they got that frame of thinking as men have been adapting in society to the almost unbearable demands of these feminist indoctrinated women. Again, the more they get, the more they want to take, and then most men just can't take it anymore. And that's why a generation of men basically just don't see it as worth their time. They just don't see it as worth their time. I mean, this is where I got in 1989. People were bothering me all the time, telling me I didn't have a girlfriend, but I didn't see any reason to pursue these women back then because they were involved with these Pookie type dope dealers, and I didn't want to deal with that grief because, again, these guys basically, again, they wouldn't let you have any peace. Nope, wouldn't let you have any peace because they wanted these women, and these girls basically wanted those guys, and that's where many of these modern girls have learned their dysfunctional model. They learned it from their grandmothers, who basically I went to school with, and again, that's where the seeds of many guys not wanting to bother with these women started as related to things, because the Gen Xers were the first children who basically were taken out of God's order because they were the children of many of the women during the time of the feminist movement. And that's where the relationship started to become untenable because it was a waste of time to look to pursue these girls because their heads were filled with trauma, filled with a lot of misinformation about how relationships were supposed to work. They were caught up, again, chasing a fantasy to the point where no guy was ever good enough, but they would still deal with these Pookie types. Again, these women, again, can't help meet a man's needs and only bring him problems overall. And that's why most men these days, as they've adapted to this toxic situation that the devil has created, basically see it better to spend their time pursuing other interests rather than look to try to pursue a relationship with any of these women anymore. Now, if you want to learn why so many men want nothing to do with women and how they're caught up in a paradigm of failure, you can pick up my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, to learn all about the paradigm of failure that has been keeping Black women single for generation after generation for the last 60 years. And if you want to learn why so many women are completely incompatible with men, you can pick up my other book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, along with Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. And both of those books will explain to you why so many men just basically see relationships as a waste of time, because when it comes down to these modern feminist indoctrinated women, there's no way you can have a relationship with someone who basically is completely incompatible with you. And if you want to see me make more videos talking about men and women's relationships in the Black community and taking points like this to the barbecue, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App to help me stay on the air. And that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. Esteem a New Woman. The devilish diva starts on the road to becoming a new creature in Christ in this all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem a New Woman at Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.